I never imagined that the 2-story wooden house by Lake Huron in Michigan, the one I'd poured my sweat, tears, and 7 years of relentless work into owning, would become the fire that burned away the last threads tying me to my family. It was an old, weathered place, its white paint peeling and its roof patched in spots. But to me, it was perfect. A front porch overlooking the shimmering water, surrounded by whispering pine forests, and a tiny attic I planned to turn into my art studio. I'm Emily Carter, 28 years old, and I bought that house to escape a lifetime of being overshadowed by my parents and my older brother, Ethan. But just months after I moved in, my family showed up, not to celebrate, but to demand, to sue, and ultimately to destroy everything with words and literal flames. If you love stories of resilience, reclaiming justice with style, and rediscovering your worth, hit that subscribe button for Graceful Revenge now. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Let's dive into the power of elegant revenge and life's deepest lessons together. I grew up in Akron, Ohio, in a modest working-class neighborhood where everyone knew the Carters as a typical American family. My dad, James, was a mechanic with rough hands and a booming voice that echoed like a truck engine. My mom, Linda, worked as a cashier at the local supermarket, her face perpetually tired, but her eyes lighting up whenever she talked about Ethan, my brother, 3 years older than me, the golden child they saw as the family's one true hope. Ethan was tall, blonde, with a cocky grin that made every girl at school swoon. He was the star quarterback of the Akron Wildcats, famously scoring the winning touchdown in the state championship when he was 17. A moment my parents retold like it was family lore. And me? I was just Emily, the scrawny, quiet little sister who liked sitting under the backyard oak with a book or a sketch pad, things my dad dismissed as kid stuff for dreamers. The favoritism started so early, I barely understood it at first. I remember my 5th birthday, a sticky summer afternoon when Mom plopped a cheap chocolate cake from the supermarket in front of me. No candles, no gifts, just a curt, "Eat it and don't make a mess." A few months earlier, Ethan's 8th birthday had been a blowout. They hired a clown, bought him a shiny red bike, and invited his whole Pee-wee football team to play in the yard. I stood in the corner, clutching a deflated balloon Mom had tossed me as consolation, watching Ethan ride circles while everyone clapped like he'd just won the Super Bowl. I didn't cry. I'd learned to hold back tears early, but the feeling of being left out sank into my chest like a rusty nail. When I was 7, Ethan got a pair of brand new football cleats, the expensive kind Dad worked overtime to afford. My birthday that year? A tattered old book about animals Mom picked up from a thrift store, with a warning: "Don't ask for much. We're not made of money." I didn't ask. I just wanted to be seen, to be loved like Ethan was. But every time I tried, like when I got straight A's or won an art contest at the county fair, my parents gave me a half-hearted nod before turning to ask Ethan about practice or his weekend plans. "Ethan's gonna do big things," Dad would say, slapping his shoulder proudly. "You, Emily, just live a good life, and that's enough." I didn't hate Ethan at first. He was my big brother, and in rare moments, he was kind. Like when he taught me to throw a football in the backyard or split a Snickers bar he'd bought from the corner store. But as he grew up, my parents' coddling turned him into someone else. He dropped out of Ohio State after 2 semesters because school was boring, then came home demanding they bankroll a car repair shop, a plan that crashed and burned when he blew their $5,000 on beer, poker, and buddies instead of tools. Meanwhile, I started working part-time at a donut shop at 15, waking up at 4 a.m. to knead dough and scrub counters, saving every penny for college so I wouldn't have to lean on anyone. At 18, I left Akron for the University of Michigan to study architecture. The day I boarded the bus, my beat-up suitcase stuffed with thrift store clothes, my parents didn't even see me off. They were too busy taking Ethan to check out a used motorcycle he wanted. I sat in the back, watching the town fade through the window, and promised myself, I'll build my own life without them. And I did. After graduating, I moved to Chicago, starting as a low-paid design assistant, then climbing the ladder through sleepless nights, sketching blueprints, and days racing across the city to meet clients. I worked myself to the bone, but every big contract, like designing the lobby for a boutique hotel downtown, was a step toward proving I wasn't invisible, wasn't worthless like my family made me feel. After 7 years, I saved enough to buy the house by Lake Huron. It was a fixer-upper, its walls chipped and its charm faded. But to me, it was everything. I found it one fall afternoon, driving through Michigan's suburbs to unwind after a brutal project. Sunlight filtered through the pines, glinting off the still lake, and the house stood there, quiet but inviting. I called the seller on the spot, and after 3 months of haggling, I signed the deed with my life savings, $220,000, plus a small bank loan I knew I could handle. The day I moved in, I stood on the porch, breathing in the scent of pine and water, and felt, for the first time, like I truly belonged somewhere. That night, I called my parents, hoping they'd be proud. Dad picked up, gruff as ever. "Sounds pricey. What's a big house like that for?" Mom chimed in. "Ethan's struggling, you know." "Don't go bragging. It'll just upset him." I hung up, hands shaking with disappointment, but told myself, this is mine. They can't take this joy away. Everything changed on a rainy afternoon 3 months later. I was painting the living room, a soft sea blue to echo the lake, when a loud knock rattled the door. I opened it to find Dad standing there, his jacket soaked, eyes bloodshot with anger. Mom was beside him, clutching an old purse, and Ethan leaned against the frame, glaring at me with a mix of jealousy and defiance. They barged in without waiting, their muddy boots smearing the hardwood I'd scrubbed clean that morning. "Nice place," Dad said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. He paced the room, running a hand along the wall like he was appraising it. "But it's too big for just you. Ethan lost his job at the lumber mill. He needs a place to get back on his feet. You should let him move in here." I froze, paintbrush still in hand, unable to believe my ears. "This is my house," I said, my voice trembling as I fought back fury. "I nearly killed myself working for it. Ethan's got hands and feet. Why can't he figure it out himself?" Mom jumped in, her eyes welling up like I'd slapped her. "What's that supposed to mean, Emily? Your brother's desperate, and all you care about is yourself. Family helps each other." Ethan smirked, stepping closer, his breath reeking of beer. "Come on, Em. You don't have a husband or kids to need a place like this. Give it to me. I'll turn it into something real, maybe a little bar to make some cash for the family." I stared at him, the brother I'd once idolized, now just a leech. "Ethan," I said, my voice hardening, "you've trashed everything Mom and Dad ever gave you. You're not touching this house." Dad stepped forward, jabbing a finger in my face. "You dare talk to your brother like that? You ungrateful little—" "We raised you, and now you turn your back when family needs you most. This house will be Ethan's, whether you like it or not." My blood boiled, but I didn't want it to escalate. "Get out," I said, my voice steady but sharp. "This is my home, and you're not welcome here." Dad stared at me for a long moment, then stormed out, dragging Mom and Ethan with him. Before the door slammed, he turned back, his voice low and menacing. "You'll regret that attitude, Emily. We're not done." I shut the door, leaning against it, heart pounding. I thought it was just a flare-up, that they'd let it go. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, a mail carrier knocked, handing me a thick envelope from the local courthouse. I tore it open, and my stomach dropped. My parents, on Ethan's behalf, were suing me, claiming the house because I didn't need it. And Ethan deserved family support in his time of need. They'd hired a cheap lawyer from Akron, a middle-aged guy named Harold with a rumpled suit, whose poorly written filing was still enough to drag me into court. I sank to the living room floor, papers scattered around me, feeling like the world was caving in. The house, my greatest dream, the one thing I'd sacrificed everything for, was now a target for the family that had already taken so much. I called Jake, the man I'd met 6 months earlier at an art exhibit in Chicago. Jake was a freelance journalist, tall with messy hair, warm brown eyes, and a deep voice that always made me feel safe. "They can't do this," he said over the phone, his tone furious. "It's your property, Em. I'm coming over." Jake arrived that night, driving 4 hours from Chicago in the rain. He hugged me tight, then sat with me to sift through the papers. "They've got no legal ground," he said, flipping pages. "But they'll play dirty. I know people like this. You need a good lawyer." I nodded, though I just wanted to cry. I didn't want to fight my family, but I couldn't let them steal the only thing that was truly mine. The next morning, Jake took me to Rachel Bennett's office, a top Chicago lawyer known for handling property disputes. Rachel, a sharp 40-something with platinum blonde hair and eyes like a hawk, read the filing and snorted. "This is a joke. They've got no evidence, no rights, but they'll tug at the heartstrings to sway the judge. We need to hit harder, not just defend the house, but make them pay for even trying this." I signed her contract, wincing at the cost, but I had no choice. The trial began on a frigid winter day in a small Michigan courtroom, its wood-paneled walls and stiff benches adding to the tension. My parents sat across from me, playing the perfect victims. Dad wore an old flannel shirt, hands clasped like he was praying, while Mom clutched tissues, eyes red. Ethan sat beside them, his borrowed suit too tight, but he still flashed that cocky grin, glancing at me like it was a dare. I sat with Rachel, gripping the table, trying to stay calm despite the storm inside me. Their lawyer, Harold, went first, his voice raspy from years of smoking. "Your Honor," he started, "the Carters are a hardworking family who've always put their kids first. Ethan Carter, a promising young man, hit hard times when he lost his job due to the economy, something beyond his control. Meanwhile, Emily Carter, who owns a house far bigger than she needs, refused to help her brother in his hour of need. We asked the court to transfer the property to Ethan, giving him a chance to rebuild his life." I wanted to scream that it was a lie, but Rachel squeezed my shoulder, whispering, "Let them dig their hole. We'll strike back." When her turn came, she stood, her voice cutting like ice. "Your Honor, the house by Lake Huron belongs to Emily Carter, purchased with money she earned through 7 years of tireless work. The Carters contributed nothing to this property and have no legal claim to it. Moreover, we'll prove this isn't family support. It's a selfish grab driven by blind favoritism and Ethan Carter's entitlement." Rachel called me to the stand. I walked up, legs shaky, but Jake's encouraging nod from the gallery gave me strength. I told my story, not to whine, but to bear the truth. I talked about working at the donut shop to afford college while Ethan squandered my parents' money on parties. I described breaking my arm at 13, lying in the hospital alone because they were at Ethan's out-of-town football game. I recounted my 18th birthday, buying myself a cupcake in the dorm, while they threw Ethan a blowout party just because he felt like celebrating. My voice cracked as I said, I never asked them to love me as much as Ethan, but I won't let them take the one thing I built myself. Dad leapt up mid-testimony, yelling, "She's lying! We gave her everything, and she turned her back when Ethan needed her." The judge, Charles Grayson, a silver-haired man with a stern gaze, banged his gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Carter, or I'll have you removed." But Dad kept going, pointing at me. "She's an ungrateful brat. She doesn't deserve that house." Mom sobbed louder, burying her face in her hands, while Ethan muttered something, his eyes blazing with hate. Rachel pressed on, calling more witnesses. Sarah, my college roommate, told how I'd cried in the dorm bathroom when my parents didn't call on graduation day, while they sent Ethan $200 to celebrate doing nothing. Mr. Peterson, my old donut shop boss, confirmed how hard I'd worked, often staying late to clean for $6 an hour. Each testimony chipped away at the perfect family tale they'd spun, but they didn't go down easy. Harold put Ethan on the stand. He played the victim flawlessly, eyes teary. "I just want a chance to get back on my feet. Losing my job broke me, and Emily, my sister, turned her back. I don't know why she's so selfish." I wanted to lunge across the room and scream that he'd never tried, that he'd lived off my parents since dropping out, but Rachel held me back. Instead, she asked, "Mr. Carter, what have you done to help yourself since losing your job?" Ethan stammered, I looked for work, but it's tough." Rachel smirked, presenting evidence. A bar receipt from Akron, where he'd blown $300 2 weeks earlier, while claiming he was broken. The courtroom buzzed, and I saw Dad's face flush with shame. The trial dragged on for 6 months, a grueling war of attrition. My parents kept dredging up lies to smear me, that I'd run away from home once I slept at a friend's after a fight, that I didn't care about family, though I'd sent money when Mom was sick, only for them to buy Ethan a new TV. But Rachel wouldn't let them win. She showed the house deed, payment receipts, mortgage statements, all in my name. She presented old texts where they refused me $500 for tuition, saying, "Ethan needs it more for his car." She even dug up video from Ethan's 21st birthday, a lavish party with a live band and fireworks, filmed the same day I worked overtime to pay off student loans. On the final day, the air felt heavy, like a storm was brewing. Dad made one last stand, his voice shaking with rage. "Judge Grayson, she's not our family anymore if she keeps that house. Ethan's my blood, and I'll do anything to save him." I stared at him, the man I'd once idolized, now just someone willing to crush me to prop Ethan up. Rachel squeezed my hand under the table, whispering, "They've lost, Em. Let them bury themselves." Judge Grayson banged his gavel for silence. He scanned the room, then delivered the verdict. The house by Lake Huron belongs to Emily Carter, purchased with her own money and effort. The Carter family has no legal or moral right to claim it. He paused, glaring at my parents. Furthermore, James and Linda Carter are ordered to pay Emily $200,000 for emotional damages and legal costs caused by this baseless suit. Ethan Carter receives no claim to this property. Dad slammed the table, shouting, "This is an outrage! She'll pay for this!" But court officers dragged him out. Mom collapsed in her seat, sobbing hysterically. I walked out, legs trembling, not from triumph, but from knowing I'd lost my family for good. Jake hugged me under the gray sky, whispering, "You won, Em! I'm proud of you." But the victory tasted bitter, like ashes in my mouth. After the trial, I cut all ties. I blocked my parents' numbers, deleted their emails, and sent back their letters unopened. The house by the lake became my sanctuary, where I started over with Jake. He moved in, bringing his old typewriter and tattered books he loved. We turned the place into a home. I painted abstract canvases, swirls of blue, red, and yellow, capturing my pain and hope, to hang on the walls, while Jake set up a writing nook by the lake view window. Every night, we sat on the porch, sipping cold beers and listening to the waves, trying to bury the scars my family left behind. I'd met Jake 6 months before the trial, at a Chicago art exhibit. He'd stood before my painting, a moonlit lake, and said, "You painted this like you've lived in it." I laughed, the first time in months, and we talked for hours about art, life, and dreams no one else got. Jake grew up in Detroit in a broken home, and he understood abandonment better than anyone. He became my companion, then my lover, and now the man I wanted a future with. Life settled into a rhythm. I kept designing interiors, taking remote projects to stay at the lake. Jake wrote for big papers, moving from small blurbs to in-depth investigations. We started talking about marriage, a small wedding by the lake with close friends. I thought the past was buried, but I was wrong. One freezing winter night, nearly 2 years after the trial, I woke to the sound of shattering glass. Jake bolted upright beside me, whispering, "What was that?" We raced downstairs to find the living room window smashed, the air thick with gasoline fumes. Before I could react, a Molotov cocktail sailed through, exploding on the floor in a roar of flame. I screamed, scrambling outside with Jake as fire devoured the rug I'd bought at a flea market and the curtains I'd sewn myself. Jake dialed 911, and I stood frozen in the snow, watching my dream burn. Firefighters arrived in 20 minutes, but when the blaze was out, only ruins remained. Blackened beams, charred furniture, my paintings reduced to smoke. I dropped to my knees in the snow, hands over my face, sobbing silently. Jake pulled me close, but I felt nothing but emptiness. Police sifted through the wreckage and found an old lighter, the kind Dad always carried, engraved with JC, James Carter. I shook my head, refusing to believe it, but Jake gripped my hand. "You know who did this, Em. They won't stop." The investigation took 2 weeks. They pulled security footage from a gas station 10 miles away, showing Ethan buying 2 cans of gas and a glass bottle the night before. He grinned at the cashier like he was sharing a joke. They arrested him at an Akron bar, drunk and raging as they cuffed him. Under interrogation, he spilled everything. Dad had told him to burn the house, to teach me a lesson, to make me feel what it's like to lose everything, like he did. Ethan added, his voice venomous, "Dad said she didn't deserve it. If we couldn't have it, no one could." The second trial was swift but agonizing. Ethan pleaded guilty to arson and attempted harm, getting 12 years with no parole. Dad was convicted of conspiracy, sentenced to 7 years after police found texts he'd sent Ethan. "Burn it down, but don't leave a trace." Mom wasn't charged, but she sat in the gallery, weeping and begging me to forgive them. "I didn't know they'd do this, Emily. I just wanted us to be a family." I turned away, silent. She wasn't innocent. She'd stood by silently while they crushed me for years, and I had nothing left to give her. The house was gone, but insurance and the settlement, just enough. Let me and Jake buy a small Chicago apartment. We moved there with the few things we salvaged: a scorched painting I'd pulled from the ashes, and Jake's typewriter. I kept designing, and Jake wrote a series called Family Flames about the arson, drawing millions of readers nationwide. He turned my pain into a warning, but every night I dreamed of fire, smoke, and Ethan's cold stare as they led him away in cuffs. Life in Chicago wasn't easy. Our tiny apartment had one bedroom, thin walls that carried the neighbors' fights, but to me, it was a fresh start. I hung the scorched painting on the wall, a half-burned lake scene, the rest a smear of charcoal, as a reminder of what I'd survived. Jake set his typewriter by the window, and we lived simply, eating ramen on tight days, but always together. I started therapy, a tough but necessary step. Dr. Ellen, an older woman with a soothing voice, helped me face the emotional scars my family left. I told her about being ignored, about the fire, about the mix of rage and emptiness when I thought of my parents and Ethan. "You don't have to forgive them," she said one session, "but you need to forgive yourself, forever thinking you weren't enough to be loved." Her words hit hard, and I cried for hours after, finally letting myself feel the pain. Jake was my rock. He wasn't just my partner, but my lifeline through every storm. One night, as we sat on the apartment floor with cold coffee, he knelt, holding a simple silver ring. "I don't have much, Em, but I want to spend my life with you. Will you marry me?" I nodded, tears streaming, and we held each other under the dim yellow light. Our wedding came 3 months later, a small ceremony in a park near Lake Michigan, with 10 close friends and Jake's family, who welcomed me like their own. I wore a plain white dress from a thrift store, and Jake wore his favorite blue shirt. We didn't invite my family. They weren't part of my life anymore. But the past wouldn't stay buried. A year after the wedding, a letter arrived from Mom, sent from Akron. Her shaky handwriting read, "Emily, I know you hate us, but please visit your father. He's got lung cancer in prison, won't last long. Ethan asks about you. He's so sorry." I read it, hands trembling, then tore it to shreds. I didn't want to see them, didn't want late apologies. They'd chosen Ethan over me for 28 years, and now, with everything crumbling, they wanted me back to comfort them? I couldn't. Jake found the pieces in the trash, taped them together, and read it. He didn't push, just held me and said, "It's your call. I'm here either way." I lay in his arms all night, thinking of Dad, the man who'd taught me to fish at 5, but also ordered my house burned. I thought of Ethan, the brother who'd shared candy with me, but also torched my life, and Mom, who'd watched me suffer in silence. I decided not to go. I owed them nothing. 2 months later, word came that Dad died in prison. Mom sent another brief letter. "Your father's gone. Funeral's in Akron if you want to come." I didn't go. I didn't know what I felt, grief, emptiness, or relief. Jake took me to Lake Michigan that day, and we sat on the sand, watching the waves. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I said, "but I will be, because of you." Ethan got out early after 8 years for good behavior, but he never contacted me, and I didn't seek him out. A friend from Akron said he lives in a rundown motel, working odd jobs at a garage, alone. Mom's in the old house, now falling apart, selling off junk to get by. They lost each other, just like they lost me. I'm 35 now, living with Jake in our Chicago apartment. We're not rich, but we're happy. I run a small design studio, taking projects from all over, and my paintings are starting to show in local galleries. Jake's a known journalist after Family Flames, and his book based on our story sold thousands. We don't have kids, not ready, maybe never will, But we've got Max, a golden retriever we rescued, with fur as bright as the sun. Every morning, I stand on the balcony, watching the bustling streets below, breathing deep. The fire dreams have faded, eased by years of therapy and Jake's love. The house by the lake is a distant memory, but it taught me I'm stronger than I knew. My family, Ethan, Dad, Mom, left scars that won't fully heal, but they don't ache like they used to. One fall day, Jake and I drove to Lake Michigan with a small wooden box. Inside were Mom's last letter scraps, an old photo of me and Ethan as kids, and the JC lighter the police returned after the trial. I stood on the sand, wind tugging my hair, and tossed it into the water. It floated, then sank beneath the waves, taking the past I no longer wanted. Jake held my hand, and we walked back to the car, leaving the lake behind. I don't know what's ahead, but I know this. I survived. Not because of my family, but despite them. With Jake, I'm not just surviving, I'm living with all I ever dreamed of. Freedom, love, and a home, however small, that's truly mine.